My dad said, "You'll always be behind her." Then the realtor spoke. Before we get into detail, please like and subscribe for more. My name is Nino Maya, and I'm 32 years old. The night my father looked me in the eye and said, "You'll always be behind her," I felt something inside me go quiet. Not broken, just quiet. Like when you realize arguing won't change the verdict, so you stop wasting your breath. We were sitting around the dinner table, my whole family crammed into my parents' dining room, the same room where every major humiliation of my life had taken place. My sister Vanessa sat across from me, wearing that smile she always wore when she knew she was winning, and my mother was passing around her phone, showing everyone the new marble countertops Vanessa had just installed in her kitchen. "See, look at this," my mother kept saying, thrusting the phone at relatives who nodded politely. "Custom imported. Vanessa has such an eye for design." And Vanessa leaned back in her chair, pretending to be modest, but soaking in every word like sunlight. My aunt made some comment about how beautiful the house was, and my uncle asked how much something like that cost, and my mother waved her hand and said, "Oh, we helped, of course, but Vanessa earned it. She works so hard." I sat there eating quietly, hoping the conversation would move on, but it never did. It always circled back to Vanessa, to her house, to her life, to everything she had that I apparently didn't. And then my father, who had been silent for most of the meal, set down his fork and looked directly at me. Not at Vanessa, at me. And he said it. "You'll always be behind her, Maya. That's just how it is." The table went quiet for half a second. Then my mother laughed. That high nervous laugh she does when something awkward happens, but she wants everyone to think it's fine. And then my sister laughed too, lighter, easier, like it was a joke we were all in on. Except I wasn't laughing. I was sitting there with my fork halfway to my mouth, frozen, feeling like I'd just been slapped in front of everyone I knew. My cousin looked down at her plate. My uncle coughed, and my father just went back to eating like he'd commented on the weather. I wanted to stand up. I wanted to leave. I wanted to scream that he had no idea what I'd been doing, no idea what I'd been working toward, no idea that while they were all busy comparing me to Vanessa, I'd been building something they couldn't see. But I didn't say any of that, because I'd learned a long time ago that defending yourself in that house only gave them more ammunition. So I smiled, thin and tight, and said, "Pass the salt, please." After dinner, everyone moved to the living room, and my mother pulled out more photos. Vanessa's backyard renovation, Vanessa's new furniture, Vanessa's upcoming vacation. And the whole time, my mother kept glancing at me like she was waiting for me to say something, to react, to prove that I was jealous so she could feel justified in her favoritism. But I gave her nothing. I sat on the couch, nodded when spoken to, and kept my face neutral. My sister, though, couldn't resist. She leaned over and whispered, just loud enough for me to hear, "Maybe renting is just your level." I turned to look at her, and she was smiling. Not meanly, not cruelly, just casually. Like she'd made an observation about the weather. And that was worse somehow, because it meant she truly believed it. She truly believed I was less than her, that I would always be less, and that this was simply the natural order of things. I didn't respond. I just stood up, said I had to leave early for work the next day, and walked out. In my car, I sat in the driveway for 10 minutes with my hands on the steering wheel, replaying the whole night. My father's words, my mother's laughter, my sister's smirk. And I felt the tears come, hot and angry and humiliating, because even though I knew they were wrong, even though I knew I'd been working harder than any of them realized, a small part of me wondered if maybe they were right. Maybe I was always going to be behind. Maybe effort didn't matter if the starting line was rigged. But then I thought about the spreadsheet on my laptop, the one I updated every week, tracking every dollar saved, every debt paid down, every step closer to the goal I'd set for myself 3 years ago. I thought about the overtime shifts I'd taken, the vacations I'd skipped, the friends I'd said no to because I was too busy building something none of them could see. And I thought about the realtor I'd been meeting with for the past 2 months, the one who looked at my finances and said, You're more prepared than most people twice your age. I wiped my face, started the car, and drove home. And I decided right then that I wasn't going to tell them anything. Not about the pre-approval, not about the house hunt, not about any of it. Because the best response to people who've already written your ending is to let them be surprised when they're wrong. The thing about being underestimated is that it gives you freedom. No one watches you. No one asks questions. No one expects anything, so you can move in silence. And silence, I'd learned, was a kind of power. For the next few months, I kept showing up to family dinners, kept nodding through conversations about Vanessa's life, kept my mouth shut when my mother made comments about how I should be thinking about settling down, buying a place, building equity. "You're not getting any younger," she'd say, like I didn't know, like I hadn't been thinking about it every single day. And my father would nod along, that same nod he always did, the one that meant agreement without effort, judgment without thought. He never asked me how work was going, never asked if I needed help, never asked if I had plans. He'd already decided my story, and in his version, I was the one who stayed behind. I was the one who tried but never quite made it. I was the benchmark that made Vanessa look better. There was one night, about a month after the dinner, when my sister called me. It was late, past 10, and I almost didn't answer, because we didn't really talk unless we had to. But I picked up, and she was cheerful, buzzing with energy, and she said, "Guess what? We're adding a sunroom. Mom and Dad are helping with the cost. Isn't that amazing?" I said, "That's great, Vanessa. Congrats." And she laughed and said, "You sound tired. Are you okay? Work stressing you out?" I said I was fine, and she said, "Well, don't work too hard. You know, life's about balance. You should take a vacation or something. Treat yourself." Treat yourself. Like I hadn't been denying myself everything for years just to get to this point. Like I was struggling because I didn't know how to manage money, not because I was funneling every cent into a future she couldn't imagine for me. I told her I'd think about it, hung up, and stared at the ceiling for an hour, wondering how much longer I'd have to wait before I could stop pretending. But the wait was worth it, because 2 weeks later, I got the call. The house I'd been watching, the one I'd fallen in love with during a quiet Sunday walkthrough, the one I'd put an offer on with shaking hands, had accepted. It was mine. Pending inspection, pending paperwork, pending 1,000 little details, but it was mine. I sat in my apartment that night with a glass of wine I didn't drink, just holding it, feeling the weight of what I'd done. The house wasn't flashy. It wasn't in the same neighborhood as Vanessa's. It didn't have imported marble, or a sunroom, or whatever other upgrades my parents threw money at. But it was mine. Bought with my own money, my own credit, my own stubborn refusal to let their laughter be the last word. And I didn't tell anyone. Not my friends, not my coworkers, not even my cousin, who I was close to. I kept it private because I wanted the reveal to land exactly the way I'd imagined it. I spent the next 6 weeks closing on the house, moving in slowly, setting things up the way I wanted them. I painted the living room a soft gray. I bought furniture that fit the space. I hung art that meant something to me. And every night, I'd walk through the rooms and feel something I hadn't felt in years. Pride. Not the loud, performative kind my family valued, but the quiet kind that sits in your chest and doesn't need an audience. During this time, family dinners continued as usual. My mother talked about Vanessa's sunroom. My father nodded. My sister beamed. And I smiled and sipped my water and said very little. At one point, my mother asked if I was seeing anyone, and when I said no, she sighed and said, "Well, maybe focus on getting your own place first. Men like stability." I almost laughed. Instead, I said, "I'll keep that in mind." My sister, ever helpful, added, "You know, there are some good apartments near us. I could send you links if you want." I thanked her and changed the subject. And I watched them all sit there, so sure they knew my life, or so sure they'd already written the ending, and I felt a strange kind of calm. Because I knew something they didn't. I knew the story was about to change. It was a Saturday afternoon when I finally decided to do it. I texted the family group chat, Casual, simple. Hey, I want to show you all something. Can everyone come by tomorrow around 2? My mother responded first. Come by where? I said. I'll send you the address. There was a pause. Then my sister. Are you moving? I didn't answer that. I just sent the address and said, see you then. The next day, I woke up early, cleaned the house even though it was already clean, and made coffee I didn't drink. I was nervous, which annoyed me because I'd done nothing wrong. I'd worked hard, saved smart, and earned this. But I also knew that what was about to happen would shift something fundamental in my family. And once you shift something like that, you can't unshift it. They arrived together, my parents and Vanessa, pulling up in my dad's car. I watched from the window as they got out, looking around, confused. The neighborhood was nice, quiet, tree-lined. Not showy, but solid. I opened the door before they knocked, and my mother's first words were, "Whose house is this?" I stepped aside and said, "Come in." They walked in slowly, cautiously, like they weren't sure if they were allowed. Vanessa looked around the entryway, her eyes scanning the walls, the floors, the light fixtures. My mother touched the banister of the staircase and said, "This is lovely. Who lives here?" I didn't answer yet. I just said, "Let me show you around." I walked them through the living room, the kitchen, the dining area. I pointed out the bay window, the original hardwood floors, the updated appliances. My father was quiet, his hands in his pockets, his face unreadable. Vanessa kept glancing at me, her smile flickering, uncertain. And my mother kept asking questions. How much is this place worth? Who did you say lives here? Is this a friend's house? We reached the back patio, and I opened the door to show them the yard. Small, manageable, private. My mother turned to me and said, "Okay, Maya, seriously, whose house is this?" And that's when I heard the front door open. I'd timed it perfectly. My realtor, Donna, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, walked in carrying a folder. She saw us on the patio and smiled. "Maya, sorry I'm late. I brought the final paperwork for you to sign." The air changed. My mother's face went blank. My father's head turned slowly toward me. And Vanessa, my sister who always had something to say, went completely still. Donna walked over, extending her hand to my parents. "You must be Maya's family. I'm Donna Elric, her realtor. Congratulations to your daughter. She just closed on this beautiful home." The silence that followed was so thick, I could feel it pressing against my skin. My mother blinked, once, twice, like she was trying to reset her brain. My father stared at me, his mouth slightly open. And Vanessa, she let out a sound, half laugh, half exhale, like she'd been punched in the stomach, but was trying to pretend she hadn't. Donna, oblivious to the tension, continued. "She's been one of the most prepared buyers I've worked with. Had her finances in order, knew exactly what she wanted, made a clean offer. The sellers loved her." My mother finally found words. "Wait, you bought this house?" I nodded. "Yes." "When?" "Closed 2 weeks ago." "Why didn't you tell us?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and said, "I wanted it to be a surprise." My father stepped forward, his face doing something I'd never seen before. This strange mix of confusion and something that might have been respect. He said, "How did you afford this?" And there it was. The question, the one that implied I couldn't have done it on my own, that there must have been help, a loan, a mistake, something. I kept my voice even. I saved. I worked overtime. I lived below my means. I made a plan and stuck to it. Vanessa finally spoke. Han, and her voice was tight. "But you never said anything. You never mentioned you were even looking." "I know." "Why?" "Because you would have made it about you," I thought. "Because Mom would have compared it to your house before I even signed the papers. Because Dad would have found a way to diminish it." But I didn't say any of that. I just said, I wanted to do it quietly. Donna excused herself, saying she'd leave the paperwork on the kitchen counter, and left. The 4 of us stood there, the silence stretching, and I could see them all recalibrating. My mother walked back inside, touching things, looking at everything with new eyes. She ran her hand along the kitchen counter and said, "This is really nice, Maya. Really nice." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't an admission that she'd been wrong. But it was something. My father followed her, nodding. That same nod, but slower now, heavier. He stopped in the living room and said, "You did this yourself?" "Yes." He nodded again, and this time, there was weight behind it. Recognition, maybe even regret. Vanessa lingered near the doorway, her arms crossed, her face doing something complicated. She walked through the house again, slower this time, and when she came back to where I was standing, she said, "It's beautiful, Maya. Really." I believed her, not because I needed her approval, but because I could hear the shift in her voice. The certainty was gone, the easy superiority, the assumption that she would always be ahead. And in that moment, I realized something I wish I'd understood earlier. Their belief in my limitations was never about me. It was about them. It was easier to keep me small than to question why they'd invested so much in keeping me there. My mother came back into the room and said almost to herself, "I guess we underestimated you." It still wasn't an apology, but it was a crack. And sometimes that's where the light gets in. They stayed for another 20 minutes, awkward and stilted, asking questions they should have asked years ago. How long had I been planning this? What did I do for work again? Was I happy? And I answered them all with patience I didn't know I had, because I realized that anger wouldn't serve me here. They'd spent years underestimating me, and I'd spent years proving them wrong in silence. The proof was all around us now, in every room, every choice, every detail I'd selected without their input. When they finally left, my father paused at the door. He looked at me for a long moment, and then he said, "I'm sorry, Maya." It wasn't much. It wasn't enough. But it was the first time he'd ever said it, and I took it for what it was. A beginning, not an ending. After they drove away, I stood in my living room, alone, and let the quiet settle around me. I thought about all the nights I'd worked late, all the times I'd swallowed my pride, all the moments I'd wanted to defend myself, but chose silence instead. And I realized that silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. Privacy wasn't failure, it was protection. And their laughter, all those years of laughter, was never prophecy. It was just noise. The weeks that followed were strange. My mother called more often, asking how I was settling in, offering to help decorate, suggesting we have dinner at my place sometime. My father sent a text, short and awkward, saying he was proud of me. And Vanessa, she didn't call, but she did send a message. "Your house is really beautiful. I'm sorry I didn't see it coming." I didn't respond right away. I let myself sit with it, with the apology that came too late, with the recognition that came only after proof. And I realized that I didn't need them to have believed in me from the beginning. I just needed to believe in myself. And I had. Quietly, stubbornly, against every voice that told me I couldn't. There was a family gathering a month later, at my parents' house again, the same dining room where my father had said those words. And this time, when my mother started talking about houses and renovations, she turned to me and said, "Maya, you should show everyone your place. It's stunning." And for the first time, I was the one they asked about, the one they wanted to hear from, the one whose life was worth discussing. Vanessa sat across from me, quieter than usual, and when our eyes met, she gave me a small nod. Not quite respect, not quite surrender, but acknowledgement. The playing field had leveled, and she knew it. I thought about that night often in the months that followed, the night my father said I'd always be behind her. And I thought about how wrong he was, not because I'd surpassed Vanessa, but because I'd stopped measuring my worth against hers. I'd built something that belonged to me, something earned through patience and discipline, and the refusal to let other people's doubts become my ceiling. And here's what I want you to understand. If you're listening to this, and you've ever been told you're not enough, that you'll never catch up, that your dreams are unrealistic, Their words are not a map. They're just noise. And the most powerful thing you can do is move in silence, build in private, and let your life be the answer to every question they never bothered to ask. Because the truth is, people don't underestimate you because you're incapable. They underestimate you because it's easier than admitting they were wrong. And when you prove them wrong, not with words but with evidence, with a life lived on your own terms, you don't just change their perception of you, you change your perception of yourself. I still live in that house. I still walk through those rooms and feel the weight of what it took to get here. And every time I do, I remember that the best chapters of your life are often written when no one is watching, when you're too busy building to explain yourself, when you're too focused on the goal to care about the audience. My father was wrong. I wasn't always going to be behind her. I was just on a different path. And sometimes, the longer path, the quieter path, the one no one sees coming, is the one that takes you exactly where you need to be. If this story means something to you, if you've ever felt unseen or dismissed, or told your goals were out of reach, then know this: the people who doubt you loudest are often the ones who'll be most surprised when you succeed. And their surprise isn't your victory, your peace is. So build quietly, save stubbornly, work privately, and when the moment comes, when the realtor walks in and says your name with respect, when the people who doubted you stand in the space you created, when the words they used to diminish you echo back as lies, don't gloat. Don't shout, just stand there. Let the house speak for itself. Because silence, in the end, isn't defeat. It's the loudest answer of all.